So you might be wondering what happens with your DNA when it arrives here at the laboratory for a test like a DNA paternity test or a relationship test. Well, it's not like we are doing like a COVID test or that we're looking at your DNA under a microscope. There's actually no microscopes here. And that's because the DNA molecule is too small to be seen with a microscope. So if you can imagine a molecule of water is too small to be seen, but a drop of water you can see. And likewise with DNA, we can't see a molecule of DNA, but you can see a drop. So what we actually do in the lab is we regrow your DNA so that we end up with a drop of DNA. And it's that drop of DNA that we're running through the profiling machines. But the first step is to extract your DNA. That is to get your DNA out of your mouth swab. So let me show you where that happens. So the laboratory here is separated into 3 different sections. This is the first section. This is where we're going to extract the DNA from your mouth swab or your samples that you're sending us. So your swab then will go into this tube. We call this an Eppendorf tube. And then with a fresh, clean scalpel blade, sterile scalpel blade, we'll cut the handle there so that just the head of the swab is in the tube. Then we're going to add special chemicals and enzymes that will break open those cells, release the DNA so that we can purify it from all the cell debris. But once you've got your purified DNA in this tube, there's not a lot of DNA, but this is the starting material of your DNA that we have to grow. And we're going to grow that DNA in part 2. So here now we have your purified DNA after that process, and then we work inside these special hoods. These have an airflow that comes out and protects the samples. And we then transfer a little bit of that purified DNA of yours into another tube where we add all the chemicals and enzymes that are there to regrow that DNA. And once we have that DNA regrown, and now we've got billions of copies, a drop of your DNA, we can then analyze it in section 3 of the laboratory. So here we are in the 3rd and final section. You can see my lab coat has changed. I'm wearing a blue lab coat. We affectionately call this room the blue room. And the reason I've changed my lab coat is because we are regrowing your DNA. They're being grown in those desktop computer-controlled heaters. They give the right conditions for that growing reaction to occur. And in those tubes are now billions of copies of DNA. And we don't want those billions of copies of DNA to go out into our clean areas where there's very little DNA. So scientifically, it's correct procedure to have these areas separated. And everything that's in here stays in here. So once those tubes come off those machines, they've got now your drop of DNA, and then they go into these machines. These are machines that have been made just for the job of DNA profiling or DNA sequencing. And inside here, there's a laser, and your DNA runs through the machine. When the laser hits your drop of DNA, it excites and visualizes that DNA on a computer screen so that we know exactly what your DNA type is in each of those regions that we're looking at. And that's really important so that we get your exact DNA profile and then can give you that final result on how your relationship is with someone else.